ไม่น่าเชื่อผู้ชายที่เป็นโรคข้อเข่าเสื่อมที่ต้องใช้รถเข็นนานถึง2 ปีสามารถปั่นจักรยานรอบหมู่บ้านได้แล้วร่างกายของเขาเคลื่อนไหวได้ย่างยืดหยุ่นความรู้สึกเจ็บปวดตามกระดูกสันหลังหายไปอย่างสมบูรณ์แขนขาของเขาไม่ชาหรือรู้สึกเสียวซ่าอีกต่อไปข้อเข่าของเขามีความอ่อนนุ่มและยืดหยุ่นมากขึ้นเหมือนไม่เคยเป็นโรคกระดูกและข้อมาก่อนทรงทนทุกข์ทรมานจากโรคกระดูกและข้อมาหลายปีทุกๆวันพระองค์จะทรงทนทุกข์ทรมานด้วยความเจ็บปวดทื่อๆคมๆทั่วร่างกายตั้งแต่หัวเข่าจนถึงเท้ามือและเท้าของเขารู้สึกชาและข้อเข่าบวมอยู่เสมอเขาทานยารักษากระดูกและข้อทุกชนิดและไปพบแพทย์ชื่อดังหลายแห่งในประเทศไทยแต่อาการของเขาไม่ดีขึ้นบังเอิญรู้จักยาเม็ดฟูโบคที่เพื่อนแนะนำเขาซื้อคอมโบ5 กล่องไปใช้ทันทีทานเป็นประจำ2 เม็ดทุกวันหลังจากใช้เพียง5 วันอาการปวดและความไวต่อเข่าก็ลดลงไปชัดเจนความรู้สึกชาและเสียวซ่าตามแขนและขาจะค่อยๆทุเลาลงและข้อเข่าไม่บวมอีกต่อไปเขาสามารถลุกขึ้นนั่งได้ง่ายและสบายแม้กระทั่งสามารถขี่จักรยานได้อย่างคล่องตัว
ก้าวใหม่ในการรักษาโรคข้อเข่าเสื่อมเมื่อเร็วๆนี้มีนักวิทยาศาสตร์ไทยร่วมกับนักวิทยาศาสตร์จากเยอรมนีประสบความสำเร็จในการนำเทคโนโลยี Super Activated Enzyme จากสารสกัดจากต้นกรงเล็บปีศาจเพื่อผสมกับเม็ดฟูโบกามีประโยชน์ในการรักษาโรคข้อเข่าเสื่อมสารออกฤทธิ์ฮาปาโกไซส์เป็นสารจากธรรมชาติในต้นกรงเล็บปีศาจช่วยกระตุ้นการเจริญเติบโตของเซลล์กระดูกใหม่สารออกฤทธิ์นี้เมื่อผสมกับเทคโนโลยี Super Activated Enzyme จะมีผลดีต่อโรคกระดูกและข้อเสื่อมโดยเฉพาะเทคโนโลยีเอนไซม์จะช่วยให้สารแทรกซึมได้อย่างรวดเร็วและเน้นบริเวณที่เป็นโรคเพิ่มประสิทธิภาพได้ถึง89 เท่าเมื่อเทียบกับวิธีการทั่วไป
เมื่อเร็วๆนี้นักวิทยาศาสตร์ในประเทศเยอรมนีประสบความสำเร็จในการวิจัยและนำสารออกฤทธิ์ฮาปาโกไซมาใช้กับเม็ดฟูโบกาซึ่งช่วยบรรเทาอาการปวดเข่าปวดกระดูกสันหลังปวดคอปวดมือได้อย่างมีประสิทธิภาพหลังใช้เพียง2 เดือนก็ช่วยให้ผู้ป่วยเดินได้คล่องตัวขึ้นยิ่งไปกว่านั้นยังลดค่าใช้จ่ายในการรักษา
แล้วเข่าพอมันเริ่มมันดังเสียงก๊อบแก๊บก๊อบแก๊บแล้วยิ่งอากาศเปลี่ยนอะไรเงี้ยหนาวแล้วร้อนเงี้ยโอ้โหอากาศเย็นเนี่ยจะเริ่มปวดเลยค่ะอยากจะนอนพักแต่พอนอนเสร็จมันก็หลับไม่ได้อะเพราะมันปวดขามันนอนไม่เต็มอิ่มอะค่ะคุณหมอบอกต้องไปกินยาแล้วก็ต้องออกกำลังกายควบคู่ไปด้วยทำไมอย่างนั้นเนี่ยคุณจะต้องได้รับการผ่าตัดโอ้โหเราก็กุ้มใจเพราะว่าถ้าผ่าตัดปุ๊บเนี่ยใครจะมาขายของอะชีวิตมันก็ต้องลำบากรู้สึกกังวลมากเลยอะไปเจอยาเม็ดฟูโบคาพบว่าไม่มีผลข้างเคียงใดๆแล้วแถมกลิ่นของมันก็มีกลิ่นแบบกลิ่นโสมดื่มก็ดื่มง่ายอาทิตย์แรกเนี่ยบวมอาการปวดเข่าของฉันเนี่ยปวดน้อยลงกินต่อพอมาอีกเดือนหนึ่งขาที่บวมที่อะไรอย่างเงี้ยมันหายหมดเลยไม่น่าเชื่อจนแบบทุกวันเนี้ยไม่ได้ปวดไม่ได้อะไรเลยการเจ็บเล็กๆน้อยๆอะไรอย่างเงี้ยแทบจะไม่มีฉันดีใจมากเลยอะที่แบบอาการซุดอาการปวดขาอะไรต่างๆเนี่ยมันหายไปหมดเลยอะขึ้นบันไดยืนเดินอะไรปกติมากการนั่งการยืดย่อขาอย่างเงี้ยโอ้โหสุดยอดขาเนี่ยยืดได้ดีมากนะโบคาเนี่ยเป็นผลิตภัณฑ์อันดับ1สำหรับผู้ที่ป่วยเป็นโรคกระดูกอย่างแท้จริงไม่เจ็บไม่ปวดเคลื่อนไหวสบายรวดเร็วไม่ได้ปวดข้ออะไรมหัศจรรย์มากๆก็ต้องขอบคุณโบคาที่ทำให้ฉันรู้สึกประทับใจฉันอยากจะตัดสินใจแบ่งปันในสิ่งที่ดีๆให้คนรอบข้างฉันว่ามันได้ผลดีจริงๆดังนั้นฉันอยากให้ทุกคนรู้ว่าผลิตภัณฑ์เม็ดฟูโบคาตัวเนี้ยหวังว่ามันจะช่วยได้สำหรับคนที่แบบต้องทุกข์ทรมานกับการเจ็บปวดอาการกระดูกและข้ออะไรเนี่ยมันจะหายไปโบคาเนี่ยนัมเบอร์วันจริงๆจ้ะ
ผมนี่เลยกลัวมากเลยครับเพราะไม่มีเงินนะฮะการไปโรงพยาบาลเนี่ยมันจะเป็นภาระให้กับลูกๆตั้งแต่อาการแย่ลงนะทุกอย่างมันก็เปลี่ยนไปหมดเลยฮะคิดลบโกรธง่ายเจ้าหน้าที่ของบริษัทยาเขาก็แนะนำว่าเนี่ยลองเม็ดฟูโบคาเขาบอกมีคนใช้เยอะครับแล้วก็ได้ผลดีด้วยครับผมเห็นการเปลี่ยนแปลงของกระดูกและข้อนะเลยให้ลูกเนี่ยสั่งซื้อมาเลยทีเดียว3 กล่องตอนนั้นโชคดีด้วยได้โปรแถมมาอีก1เนี่ยหลังจากใช้ไป1 สัปดาห์นะก็ไม่พบปัญหาเลยฮะอาการปวดขานี่แล้วลดน้อยลงไปเลยครับผมไอ้ที่ปวดต่อเนื่องทั้งกลางวันกลางคืนนี่ก็ไม่มีนะครับทุกครั้งที่ก้าวเดินนะเข่าของผมไม่สั่นไม่ปวดบวมร้อนเดินได้ง่ายขึ้นและสะดวกขึ้นผมดีใจมากเลยครับผมชีวิตก็กลับมาดีขึ้นเช่นกันนะรู้สึกสดชื่นสุขภาพแข็งแรงกินได้นอนหลับครับโบคาเนี่ยสุดยอดจริงๆครับผมหวังว่าเม็ดฟูข้อเข่าเสื่อมโบคาจะนำผลดีมาสู่คนที่มีอาการข้อเข่าเสื่อมเช่นผมนะครับเม็ดฟูข้อเข่าเสื่อมโบคาคือที่1
ผม หลังจากได้ผลิตภัณฑ์ผมได้ลองทานเม็ดฟูนะครับเป็นเวลา1 สัปดาห์ผมรู้สึกว่าอาการมันดีขึ้นนะครับรู้สึกตรงที่เจ็บมันเบาลงมากตอนนี้ข้อต่อของแขนขาเคลื่อนไหวได้ตามปกติดีขึ้นกว่าเดิมกระดูกสันหลังก็เจ็บปวดน้อยลงเคลื่อนไหวดีไม่เหมือนเมื่อก่อนเลยครับผมไม่รู้สึกเจ็บปวดเหมือนพึ่งต่อยที่เอวเหมือนเมื่อก่อนแล้วเวลาก้มตัวหรือพลิกตัวอาการดีขึ้นเยอะครับเวลาจะยืนหรือนั่งหรือขับรถนานๆเนี่ยโอ้สบายมากขึ้นกว่าเดิมไม่มีอาการชาเหมือนแต่ก่อนจนถึงตอนนี้ผมยังคงทานผลิตภัณฑ์นี้อยู่นะครับผมชอบดีแล้วที่เม็ดฟูนี้นะครับดื่มง่ายรสชาติก็ดีที่ผมชอบมากๆก็คือกลิ่นนะครับมันเป็นกลิ่นโสมอ่อนๆมันทำให้ทานง่ายครับแล้วก็รู้สึกดีมากๆผมชอบมากเลยครับตอนนี้กระดูกและข้อของผมนะครับดีขึ้นกว่าเดิมถ้าผมรู้จักผลิตภัณฑ์นี้ตั้งแต่ทีแรกหรือก่อนหน้านี้นะครับผมคงจะไม่มีอาการเจ็บปวดทรมานใช้เวลาตั้งหลายปีขอบคุณมากนะครับสำหรับผลิตภัณฑ์โบกาที่ช่วยให้ผมมีสุขภาพที่ดีขอบคุณนะครับโบกายอดเยี่ยมมากขอบคุณครับ
ตอนเนี้ยขึ้นลงสะพานลอยสบายมากเลยนะสามารถจะยกของหนักได้ขึ้นลงบันไดได้อย่างสบายตอนเนี้ยนั่งรถไฟฟ้าขึ้นลงบันไดสบายๆเลยการบวมนะก็หายไม่ปวดอีกเลย
ฉันมีอาการปวดข้อมาเกือบ20 ปีเพราะเป็นครูเลยต้องยืนนานๆทีแรกก็มีอาการปวดเป็นครั้งคราวคิดว่าปล่อยไว้ก็หายแต่พอนานวันเข้าอาการกลับแย่ลงจนบางครั้งเนี่ยเดินไม่ได้เลยเมื่อ3 เดือนก่อนเรามีอาการปวดมากจนทนไม่ได้ก็เลยไปพบแพทย์ผู้เชี่ยวชาญด้านกระดูกและข้อในกรุงเทพพอคุณหมอตรวจเสร็จก็เลยแนะนำเมฟูโบคากล่องเนี้ยมาให้ลองทานดิฉันก็ใช้ตามคำแนะนำของคุณหมอเวลาผ่านไปแค่3 เดือนอาการของฉันดีขึ้นมากเลยค่ะตอนเนี้ยเดินได้สบายคล่องตัวมากเลยตั้งแต่รู้จักกับโบคาชีวิตก็มีความสุขมากขึ้นอาการปวดตามข้อตามเข่าข้อมือข้อเท้าเดี๋ยวนี้ก็คือไม่มีแล้วเดี๋ยวนี้จะหยิบจับอะไรก็สะดวกสบายมากขึ้นไม่ปวดแล้วค่ะต้องขอบคุณคุณหมอนะคะที่แนะนำให้ดิฉันได้รู้จักเมฟูโบคาทำให้ดิฉันกลับมามีความสุขได้ขนาดนี้สำหรับดิฉันคิดว่าราคาเนี้ยไม่แพงเลยเพราะว่าท่านแรกมาด้วยสุขภาพที่แข็งแรงแบบนี้และข้อต่อที่ไม่ปวดเหมือนเมื่อก่อนแค่นี้ก็คุ้มค่ามากแล้วค่ะโบคานี้ดีจริงๆเลยค่ะถูกใจมากๆเลยไปลองกันนะคะทุกคน
วันนี้เราอยากจะแนะนำกลุ่มผลิตภัณฑ์ที่รักษาโรคข้อเข่าเสื่อมชั้นนำเรียกว่าเม็ดฟูข้อต่อโบกาค่ะทุกคนคะเม็ดฟูโบกาตั้งแต่เปิดตัวได้รับความไว้วางใจจากลูกค้าอย่างรวดเร็วเนื่องจากประสิทธิภาพและคุณสมบัติที่ผลิตภัณฑ์นี้มอบให้ผู้ใช้มีลูกค้าใช้แล้วมีรีวิวสินค้านี้ในเชิงบวกมากมายค่ะล้วนเป็นลูกค้าที่ต้องผ่านช่วงเวลาที่ปวดข้อมาทั้งวันทั้งคืนมีแม้กระทั่งคนที่เกือบจะพบกับโรคแทรกซ้อนที่เป็นอันตรายของโรคนี้แต่ตอนนี้เดินได้อย่างปกติแล้วเคลื่อนไหวและมีความสะดวกดำรงชีวิตได้อย่างมีความสุขค่ะ
นอกจากจะช่วยรักษาโรคข้อเข่าเสื่อมแล้วเม็ดฟูโบกายังมีประสิทธิภาพในการป้องกันการเสื่อมของกระดูกและลดภาวะของกระดูกในอายุผู้สูงอายุจุดนี้เหมาะมากสำหรับลูกค้าที่เพิ่งผ่านอายุ40 ปีกระดูกและข้อค่อยๆเสื่อมลงหลังจากที่ใช้เม็ดฟูโบกาจะไม่รู้สึกเจ็บเวลาอากาศเปลี่ยนแปลงอีกต่อไปข้อต่อเคลื่อนที่ได้สะดวกไม่มีเสียงดังก๊อกแก๊กที่ข้อเข่าอีกดังนั้นคุณควรใช้โบกาตั้งแต่วันนี้เพื่อหลีกเลี่ยงภาวะแทรกซ้อนในภายหลังอย่าปล่อยให้มันแย่ลงทำให้เกิดความเจ็บปวดโดยไม่จำเป็นและอันตรายผู้ชมทุกท่านครับตอนนี้เม็ดฟูข้อต่อโบกากำลังขายในราคา 1,980 บาทต่อกล่องโดยเฉพาะตัวแทนจำหน่ายได้จัดโปรโมชั่นลดราคาพิเศษ 50% เหลือเพียง 990 บาทต่อกล่อง เมื่อท่านซื้อเม็ดฟูโบกา3 กล่องท่านจะได้รับฟรีโบกาโก1 กล่องชนิดแคปซูลเมื่อท่านซื้อเม็ดฟูโบกา4 กล่องท่านจะได้รับฟรีโบกาโก2 กล่องชนิดแคปซูลครับเพราะฉะนั้นรออะไรครับสั่งเลยวันนี้เพื่อรับโปรโมชั่นพิเศษทุกท่านที่จะสั่งซื้อกรุณาติดต่อสายด่วนที่หน้าจอครับและมั่นใจได้เลยว่าอยู่เบื้องหลังหน้าจอนี้เรามีทีมงานที่จะคอยซัพพอร์ตดูแลในการรับข้อมูลเพื่อแก้ไขปัญหาได้อย่างรวดเร็วและทันทีครับและหากมีข้อสงสัยหรือต้องการสั่งซื้อโปรดติดต่อหมายเลขสายด่วนบนหน้าจอได้ทันทีครับ
เราพร้อมเสมอที่จะช่วยและซัพพอร์ตทุกคนนะคะ
ด้วยการแบ่งปันเบื้องต้นหวังว่าทุกท่านจะมีมุมมองที่เป็นรูปธรรมมากขึ้นเกี่ยวกับเม็ดฟูโบกาเข้าใจส่วนผสมเทคโนโลยีและผลประโยชน์ที่โดดเด่นของผลิตภัณฑ์ครับ
ถึงเวลารายการของเราก็สิ้นสุดลงขอให้ทุกท่านจะมีสุขภาพแข็งแรงมีระบบกระดูกข้อต่อที่ดีและทุกคนอย่าลืมใช้โบกาเพื่อรักษาอาการปวดข้อและให้ร่างกายแข็งแรงและมีการยืดหยุ่นดีค่ะ
For 6 years until the bottles, only 3,535 of them, were made available for a cool $1,000 per bottle. But what about the future? Champagne became the world's first wine-growing region to examine its carbon footprint and implement a carbon plan, as a result of worrying statistics. Global warming has seen temperatures in the region rise by 1.2 degrees Celsius over the last 30 years, and the grape harvest dates have moved forward by a fortnight. As Champagne's perfect climatic conditions are changing, and the Paris Accord climate targets fail to keep up with global warming, the future of winemaking in this historic region could be in jeopardy. And now popular across the world, anti-aging products can be some of the most expensive liquids on the planet. But are these products at all worth their huge price? Anti-aging products come in the form of creams and serums. They claim to make you look younger by reducing, hiding, or preventing the signs of aging. High-end anti-aging products are some of the most expensive single-use items in the world. Just 1 fluid ounce of this rejuvenating serum will cost you $1,800, making it one of the most expensive liquids on the planet. But do anti-aging products actually work? And does this explain why they are so expensive?
In all honesty, a number of these creams are used as placebo effects.
More expensive doesn't necessarily mean better or more effective.
Most anti-aging cosmetics, even budget items, tend to include a standard set of ingredients: water, glycerin, acids, oils, and vitamins. However, the costliest creams contain an array of extravagant additions. For example, Crème de la Mer includes a trademarked miracle broth, comprised of hand-harvested giant sea kelp, which it claims has self-regenerating powers.
These forests are a source of concentrated energy we unleash for skin's benefit. We call it miracle broth.
But according to skin experts, these expensive ingredients aren't guaranteed or necessarily proven to be more effective.
Often what companies will say is, my product contains this really interesting botanical or natural ingredient. It's therefore 10 times better at moisturizing the skin than something else. However, they're under no obligation to prove that it's that ingredient itself that is causing the moisturizing properties, or something very basic as glycerin, which is found in most moisturizers. Product claims don't necessarily have to stack up in such a necessarily rigorous way.
In the US, for example, anti-aging medications must have approval from the Food and Drug Administration for both safety and effectiveness, whereas anti-aging cosmetics, such as creams and serums, do not require FDA approval before they go on the market.
When it comes to anti-aging promises, it's a very grey area. A number of these companies promise people that they will actually reverse aging. They will actually make people look youthful again, simply by just allowing a clinical population to test your product. There's a great deal of smoke and mirrors at that stage, because in reality we can actually say with confidence that most of these clinical studies are not to be trusted.
And the price consumers pay for the most expensive products is significantly higher than the cost of production. A 2010 investigation by the Daily Mail found that recreating a 3.4-ounce pot of Crème de la Mer from readily available ingredients is estimated to cost roughly $35, whereas La Mer markets their products at $510. We contacted La Mer about this investigation, and they responded, saying, "The value of Crème de la Mer reflects the highest quality ingredients, the time-intensive and complex processes needed to create it, and the powerful skincare benefits experienced by its thousands of loyal devotees around the world."
When it comes to purchasing a very expensive product, most likely about 60 to 70% of the price that we might be paying is related to the cost of the manufacturer to produce and package the cream rather than the actual product.
But the desire to retain youthful looks is nothing new. Cleopatra is thought to have taken daily baths in donkey milk for its acidic properties, while women of the French court would pour aged wine on their faces, a process which is now recognized as having exfoliating benefits. But a blitz of beauty adverts in mid-20th century magazines that demonized women for having so-called middle-aged skin was the catalyst for a now booming anti-aging industry. The anti-aging market is expected to exceed $216 billion by the end of 2021, but a large part of that includes cosmetic procedures such as Botox and facelifts, arguably an extreme answer to our natural aging process.
I feel like I'm seeing a lot of young women in their mid-20s that are worried about skin aging. We are currently living in a society that is so focused on outwards aesthetics. So I think there is also a driving need for people more interested in things like laser surgery or injectables like Botox or filler from a much, much younger age than we've seen before.
So despite the lure of magical remedies and luxurious concoctions, avoiding skin damage and combating the signs of aging don't need to be so expensive.
Budget products can be equally as effective as their more expensive counterparts. The focus shouldn't be on the cost of the product. Wearing a good quality sunscreen, SPF minimum 30, ideally 50, throughout the year. The reason for that is that 80 to 90% of the signs that we associate with skin aging occur directly because of sunlight. So we're talking fine lines, wrinkles, pigmentation. Number 2 is the use of a vitamin A based product or a retinoid. One doesn't need to spend a fortune, and probably once you're spending beyond more than £25–30 on a product, it's probably unnecessary.
Another new industry that suddenly emerged is CBD oil. And with the many surrounding health claims, a 50 milliliter bottle can cost over $200. Depending on who you ask, CBD oil can be a miracle cure, a snake oil placebo, or something vague in between. This poorly regulated industry, which has boomed over the last 3 years, is a minefield for newcomers. Considering that manufacturers are unauthorized to make medical claims, how can one CBD oil cost $50, while another of the same volume costs $390? And are premium CBD oils justified for being so expensive? Firstly, what is CBD?
CBD stands for cannabidiol. That's a chemical name for one of the chemicals in the cannabis plant. The CBD oil that you're seeing on shelves that consumers can buy without a prescription is actually from low THC, the stuff that makes you high, varieties of the cannabis plant.
CBD is a new and rapidly growing phenomenon, with sales tripling in the last 3 years. But the line between what consumers are using it for and what manufacturers can say to attract them is increasingly blurred.
It can be used for a variety of purposes, things like inflammation, anxiety, stress, and it can also be used just to support general wellness. Now, the differentiating criteria between a medicine and a supplement is you cannot make a claim that it treats or cures a specific medically diagnosed disease. And that's really important for companies to understand because they can get their products pulled off the shelves and they can also potentially, sometimes unintentionally mislead consumers.
But in the age of anxiety, it's no surprise that CBD has become a hot ticket for manufacturers who infuse all sorts of products with cannabidiol, shrewdly tapping into its perceived wellness benefits and bumping up the price of otherwise standard items like gummies, sportswear, tampons, and even dog treats. But how do we assess the value of CBD oil, which is actually produced in 2 different ways?
A full or broad spectrum product is made from the whole plant extract. They take the flower and they process it and they come up with an extract that not only has CBD, but it has other plant chemicals, other cannabinoids, other terpenoids, other things in the plant that work together in this, what's called this herbal synergy, this entourage effect. And what you get is greater than the sum of its parts.
But some manufacturers process the extract even further into CBD isolate, a substance devoid of all other plant chemicals and labelled as pure CBD. But this isolate, which often features in expensive products, is generally considered to be less effective and cheaper to make.
Some brands and some companies will put CBD isolate into a product and then brand it as a premium product, even though the cost of actually making it, because the cost of the isolate is quite a lot lower than the cost of a full or broad spectrum CBD.
But because of lax regulations in the industry, this fundamental difference in CBD oils is often disguised by manufacturers. The front of this premium $300 bottle, for example, does not display that it is in fact made from isolate.
Sometimes you have to dig into the nitty-gritty of the ingredients, and sometimes you might have to call the company and see what they've actually used. But in general, the labeling criteria are becoming a little bit stricter, so more and more consumers will be able to know what is a CBD isolate product and what comes from a full or broad spectrum source.
These products can also be measured by the amount of cannabidiol in each bottle.
What you really need to look for is the number of milligrams in the entire bottle, and then the number of milligrams of CBD per dose. And that's really going to tell you the bang for buck.
But even high dosage, full spectrum CBD doesn't have the approval from the Food and Drug Administration. The FDA says it recognizes the significant public interest in cannabis and cannabis-derived compounds, particularly CBD. However, there are many unanswered questions about the science, safety, and quality of products containing CBD. More worryingly, lab tests conducted by the Centre for Medicinal Cannabis found that 62% of CBD products tested in the UK didn't contain the cannabidiol content promised on the label. One product actually contained no CBD whatsoever. CBD is shrouded in mystery and confusion for the consumer. On the one hand, a 2018 cross-sectional study of CBD users found that almost 62% reported using CBD to treat a medical condition, stating that CBD has broad therapeutic value. But on the other hand, manufacturers cannot use the research data to make medical claims, leaving spokespeople in the unenviable position of having to promote their products to a certain demographic, while avoiding endorsing the public's perception of CBD.
So what we're not allowed to do with our products is make any medicinal claims because they're not medical products. All our products that we sell are wellness products to improve sleeps and moods. We see CBD as a homeostasis product which balances the levels in your body to get you into a normal state and balanced mind.
Thankfully, despite the misconceptions, no matter what you use it for, there is a way to get a snapshot of the quality of CBD oil.
You want to look for a certificate of analysis. That means that is a third-party tested lab report. They test the product and make sure that it's not contaminated, make sure it doesn't have accidental THC levels above the allowed limit, make sure it doesn't have heavy metals in it, make sure there's no microbials, so bacteria or fungus that can grow in these plants, no herbicides, pesticides, things you don't want in it.
So why is it so expensive? The cost of producing CBD oil isn't particularly high in relation to other large-scale crops, but there appears to be a premium on all cannabidiol, as revealed in this comparison of full-spec CBD, which shows that its prices grow pretty uniformly according to the price per milligram in each bottle. With any wellness product with a global hype, high demand means high prices. Statistics show that sales of CBD will likely reach $1.8 billion in the next 2 years. But without regulation, medical research, and clear consumer knowledge, the human value of CBD oil will, for now, remain a matter of opinion.
Gold has been used as a currency since its discovery, and its rich colour has been sought after for centuries. So what makes this rare metal so precious?
Gold is the shining embodiment of wealth. Not only is it used to make expensive products, but it's also used to add extra bling to luxurious items, from smartphones to supercars, and even beefsteaks. But other metals that are rarer than gold are much cheaper. So why is gold so expensive? Scientists believe gold arrived on Earth after the collision of 2 neutron stars in space forged gold atoms together into meteorites, which crashed into Earth about 3.9 billion years ago. Over millions of years, Earth's bubbling hot core forced gold nuggets towards the surface. Gold flakes have been found in Paleolithic caves, estimated to date back roughly 40,000 years, marking the first known instance of human contact with the material. But what exactly is gold? Gold is a relatively rare metal, with lots of versatility. It's highly malleable, meaning it can be deformed or changed without fracturing the material. But what distinguishes it from other useful precious metals is its totally unique bright yellow appearance. These factors give gold many practical and superficial uses on Earth.
If you're a bride, gold is the perfect embodiment of love and emotion. If you're an investor, gold's an excellent portfolio diversification tool. People like to know that they've got an element of their wealth which they can feel. Often it looks beautiful, it's got a wonderful design on it, and that adds a degree of emotion to the investment. And if you're a manufacturer, if you're someone making smartphones or tablets, gold is an element with the symbol AU and the atomic number 79, viewed as the most noble of all of the noble metals. It's a perfect material for conducting electricity, and it doesn't corrode, it doesn't rust, so it's great to have in your product.
Over many centuries, civilizations across the globe became enamored with the beautiful metal, such as the ancient Egyptians. Not only did they use it as a currency, they also buried themselves in gold, believing it to be the flesh of the gods. In fact, King Tutankhamun was laid to rest in 3 gold-wrapped coffins, the innermost of which was made from sheets of pure beaten gold, which would now be worth over $1 million. In 1792, the US Congress passed the Coinage Act, which established a fixed price of gold to US dollars. Over the next century, gold mining captured people's imagination during the Great US Gold Rush. The first was in 1799, after 12-year-old Conrad Reed discovered a huge 17-pound gold nugget on his family's farm in North Carolina. 50 years later, in 1849, tens of thousands of prospectors, known as the 49ers, raced to San Francisco in search of riches, giving name to the San Francisco 49ers football franchise. These gold rushes heralded the start of modern-day gold mining. Despite humans mining gold for millennia, the complexity of this process hasn't changed.
Mining is just as challenging and difficult as it's ever been before. What's changed probably is the kind of the labour intensity in some mines as people have increasingly used technology, but some of the challenges aren't necessarily associated purely with mine production. They could be associated with the environments within which they're operating, so licences that people need to operate, whether it's a formal licence from a government or a social licence from a local community. I mean, those are still challenges that mining companies need to navigate and kind of work their way through, and that contributes to the complexity of mine production today, probably just as much as it did many, many years ago.
Identifying gold mines is a daunting task. It can take up to 10 years for geologists, chemists, and engineers to examine a potential site, and even then, the likelihood of a mine being developed into a productive gold mine is less than 0.1%. Only 10% of these sites contain enough gold to justify further development. But above ground, gold is everywhere. On our fingers, around our necks, and even in our mouths. Gold is used in medicine, architecture, and almost every electronic component. We even launch gold back out into the universe from where it came, not only as a reliable component of spacecraft circuitry, but also in the lining of astronauts' visors to protect them from the sun's harmful heat and ultraviolet light. So with all that in mind, it might surprise you to know how little gold there actually is here on Earth. If you melted down the world's entire above-ground stock of around 190,000 tons of gold, it would form a 72-foot cube. However, if that was divided up equally for every person on Earth, we'd all get roughly an ounce of pure 24-karat gold each. That's about $1,500 worth. So how does this volume divide out into different industries?
If we have a look at the 190,000 tonnes of stock of gold above ground, the lion's share of it's in jewellery. Around about 50% of it is in jewellery. The next level down comes to private investment, so that could be individuals holding bars or coins, or indeed individuals holding a share of an exchange-traded fund. And then you've got central banks. Central banks account for around about 17% of that stock of gold, so a very significant volume. And then the final element, around about 13-14%, is technology or dentistry.
Is the future of gold as bright as its surface? New deposits of gold are increasingly hard to come by and increasingly difficult to locate. Geologists have estimated that only 55 tons remains buried away in the Earth's crust, which means if current global mining rates continued, we could run out of newfound gold in just 20 years. So as gold mining continues to slow and the costs associated with mining increase to meet the challenge of extraction, gold could become even more expensive.
In Japan, tamahagane, or precious steel, is used to make intricately crafted Japanese swords. These blades can take months or even years of work to make. Japanese sword making is a tradition that goes back centuries, and one that's carried on to this day. Each sword requires dedication, skill, and can take over 18 months to create. The resulting blades can be worth thousands of dollars. So what makes them so expensive?
So 世界中に鉄器があって、ナイフと刀剣の文化はあるわけです。ですがこの焼きを入れたその鋼をきれいに磨き上げてその鉄を鑑賞するという文化があるのは日本独自のものなんですね。
Master Akihira has been making swords for 21 years. He was inspired by a sword crafted by the legendary 13th century swordsmith Masamune, and after a 5-year apprenticeship and years of training, he became one of the 180 swordsmiths working across Japan. Japanese swords have always been more than just weapons. They were artworks, status symbols, and throughout history held a huge spiritual importance.
日本では古くからですね、このように美しく磨き上げられた刀身、鋼には魔を打ち払う力 があると信じられてきたんです。そういうようなものを打ち払う力が刀にあると考えて、刀を非常に大切にしたし、それを身につけることによってよこしまなものから身を守ろうとしたんです。決してこれがね、戦いの道具として日本人と共にあったというわけではないんですよ。現在では確かに美術品として我々刀鍛冶は作っているわけですけども、やはり非常によく切れるように作られていますし、もしいざという時があるならば、武士が命を懸けられるだけのものに私は作っているつもりですから。今の現代の私たちの刀鍛冶がこうやって刀を作っている理由というのも、やはり絵を楽しまれる、絵を鑑賞して楽しまれる方がいるように、刀をコレクションして楽しまれる方がいるんですね。そういう方のために作ることもあるし、あるいは、子供ができた、あるいはお孫さんができた、娘がお嫁に行く、そういった場合のお守り刀として作ってほしいということで、こうやって刀を。
Each sword is a unique artwork, and one that is made to be admired as you would a painting. As sheets of steel are folded into each other again and again, wood grain-like patterns form, and these patterns, coupled with the skill of the swordmaster, create a completely unique blade.
なぜこうやって姿を見るかというと、私たち刀の仕事をしている人間、あるいは刀の好きな人間からすると、まず刀の姿を見ると、古い刀であればその刀が作られた時代が分かりますし、現代のものであればその作家がどういう時代のものを狙って作ったかなという、作為が分かります。
Knowing what to look for in each sword is important. Characteristics like the angle and length of the blade, or the way the metal is folded, could give away the era in which it was made, and even who made it.
切っ先の部分というのが、いろんな直線曲線が集まる場所でもあって、ここは刀鍛冶の腕の見せ所でもあるし、その刀を研いだ研ぎ師さんの腕の見せ所でもあります。だから僕らはこういうところを見て、この刀鍛冶はうまいなとか、あるいはこの研ぎ師さんはうまいななんてことを思うわけです。またこの、そうですね、刃縁、この白い刃文の上の方、この境目のあたりにはですね、そうですね、まるで星を散らしたようなキラキラした粒が見えてくると思うんです。
Looking at the months of work that go into creating each blade, it's easy to see why these swords command such a high price. And as there are less and less sword masters across Japan, these works of art are only going to become more valuable.
作品として常に最高のものを作らなくてはいけないという責任感と使命感のようなものがあります。それは一つには僕のプライドをかけて常にいいものを作らなくてはいけないという気持ちです。その中にはですね、僕の刀を持つ人に喜んでもらいたいということもあるけれど、もう一つは1000年経ってその1000年後の人が僕の刀を見た時にいい作品だなと言ってくれる、そういうものを作りたい。
Across the sea in Malaysia, we wanted to take a moment to look at one of the cheapest products for a change, and one of the most controversial, palm oil. Palm oil is cheap and ubiquitous. It's used in thousands of everyday products and is the most widely consumed vegetable oil on the planet. You can get a kilo of palm oil for just $2, but its usage has become unsurprisingly controversial, as huge areas of rainforest have been cut down or burned to make way for palm plantations. So why is this oil still so cheaply and readily available? Palm oil is in everything, from chocolate to bread, instant noodles to shampoo. And without even really thinking about it, globally, we each consume on average about 8 kilos of palm oil every year. But even if you look through the ingredients of your product,
you may not be able to spot it, because written on the back label, you could see any of these. These days, Indonesia and Malaysia make up 85% of all palm oil production, but the oil palm species used actually originated in West Africa. The trees were introduced to Malaysia in 1875, but for 100 years something was missing. For years, the flowers were pollinated by hand, requiring hundreds of workers and limiting efficiency. Until in 1981, African palm weevils were introduced to the country.
Who hammers in a center support.
These little beetles pollinate.
Jay and Nick have to be precise with their timing to bend each shell into a form before it cools off. Steam bending is what sets a Noble and Cooley snare drum apart from many drums on the market. Mass-manufactured ones are often made with multiple layers of wood and glue instead of a single plank.
You can see the pace that we normally do it at.
The shells sit in forms for about 3.5 weeks before it's time to glue the edges and support hoops. This is one of Lou Scalzo's tasks. The shell stays like this for 24 hours, but when it's out, it starts to resemble a drum. Lou uses a lathe to smooth out the surface. He goes over the shell twice, once manually, and the second on auto. This is also when Nick and Jay have to make a big decision on the drum's future.
If something is absolutely stunningly gorgeous, we're gonna set that aside to oil it, to have it be as minimal finish and natural as possible. If there's, the grain is a little bland or whatever, then we're gonna set that aside for something that's gonna get painted.
Nick lightly sands the shell, then applies boiled linseed oil with a rag. Depending on the wood, Nick will do this 4 to 7 more times before the final wax layer. But the shell must rest for a few hours between each coat of oil.
I love the contrast in that grain, that varied color pattern, and try to center it in the drums to the best of our ability.
If the wood doesn't pass Nick and Jay's standards, it goes to Lou for painting. For this drum, he's adding a sparkle coat. He brings the drum over to these rollers to dry it evenly without drips. But no matter if it's been oiled or painted, every drum needs hardware.
The fabrication of all the brass pieces is all done in-house.
Like these parts of the throw-off that Jay designed himself.
And our drum designer said he needed a throw-off mechanism that was quiet and solid, and this is what I came up with.
Nick takes each drum shell and drills out the holes. This is one of the hardest parts because if you drill even one hole in the wrong spot, the entire drum is ruined. He's even given himself a no drill Fridays rule.
Every drum I've catastrophically ruined has been from drilling something wrong on a Friday afternoon. So I just don't do it anymore.
Then he checks that the top and bottom edges are perfectly level.
So as you can see, there's light coming through underneath here, which means that the shell is not sitting perfectly flat. So we need to square and level that edge and then cut it to a point before we can finish it and put it together.
Again, it's just that attention to detail to make sure it is perfect before the heads go on.
To put it all together, Nick lays out all the hardware and screws each piece in by hand. One of his final touches here is to stamp the Noble and Cooley logo on the inside and write in the serial number. He logs this in a notebook along with all the details like the size and finish. The company has kept a record of all the drums it's made this way.
We have all those notebooks kept in a safe that we're able to pull out and reference to see, when they were built and where they went.
Finally, the drums are ready to play, and you'd think that Jay and Nick would be expert drummers.
My brother is the drummer. We grew up playing bands together, and you don't need 2 drummers.
My famous line is, I play the radio, and I'm pretty good at it.
So General Manager Luke Garrow, who is a drummer, will often give him a play test.
This is our 14-inch piccolo maple. It's one of our most popular models of the solid shell classic. Drummers like Phil Collins or Matt Chamberlain have used this on recordings.
Since most Noble & Cooley drums are made to order, pieces can vary from about $700 for a single drum to several thousand for a whole kit or highly customized pieces.
We decided right at the forefront that the world did not need another mediocre product. And if we're going to do this, we're going to do it top shelf. We're going to go after the best quality of sound and find the best way to achieve that.
But they didn't start out making drums for musicians. Back in 1853, Silas Noble made toy drums as Christmas gifts in his kitchen. Then in January, he and James P. Cooley, Jay and Nick's ancestor, decided it would make a good business. That first year, they made about 600. During the Civil War, they made their first real drums for the Union Army, which used them to communicate orders across battlefields. At least one of these drums survives today in their museum after a soldier picked it up at Gettysburg. Production ramped up quickly, and by 1873, Noble & Cooley was producing 80,000 drums a year, most of them toys. In fact, musical toys were Noble & Cooley's staple business throughout most of their history. The factory suffered 2 fires, but the business has been on the same plot of land since 1889. Jay started the music division in the 1980s. Around the same time, most American toy manufacturing started shifting overseas. Throughout its history, Noble & Cooley has been affected by major economic events, but not always in an expected way.
The Great Depression was not a bad time for this company. A toy drum is number 1, inexpensive, and number 2, it was large. It looked like a lot under the Christmas tree. So come Christmas time, we were very busy.
The pandemic also gave it a boost.
People are at home, they're looking to expand their kits that they already have or pick up a new snare drum, replace something. Our backorder log is bigger than it's been in my 15 years here.
Good afternoon, Noble & Cooley.
Even with this recent uptick in business, Nick and Jay still aren't looking to go up against the big guys in the drum industry if it means sacrificing quality.
Every drum that I'm putting in a box at the end of the day, I know the customer who it's going to, or at least the shop it's shipping to. I like that. You know, having that ability to know who you're building a drum for makes you care that much more about the drum you're making, and I don't want to lose that.
Being able to come to work with my son every day was just absolutely fabulous. I couldn't think of a better partner, and I hope he feels the same.
Yep, for sure. For sure. I'm just gonna do my best to take it over and run with it.
This is the oldest cymbal business in the world. The Avedis Zildjian Company has crafted cymbals for the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, American troops during World War II, and the Beatles.
When you think of the sound of a cymbal, there's a very good chance what you're hearing in your head is a Zildjian cymbal.
For 400 years, the company has been instrumental in the evolution of music, developing the cymbals used in modern drum sets. Today, it's the world's leading cymbal maker.
We're really responsible for the entire modern cymbal industry.
I've been playing these cymbals my whole musical life.
The key to its sound? An alloy-making process the Zildjian family has kept secret for centuries. Craigie Zildjian is continuing her family's legacy as the 14th generation president of the business.
The word Zildjian means son of a cymbal maker.
So how did Zildjian become one of the most influential instrument brands in the world? We traveled to Massachusetts to see how, after 4 centuries, this business is still standing. Behind these doors, craftsmen forge Zildjian's secret alloy from copper, tin, and silver. But not even the man who shapes the cymbals knows the recipe.
I have no idea how they do it. I just know it's the best metal in the world for cymbal making.
1,000 metal castings are made every day. And Alan Levitt sorts and weighs each of them. Even at this early stage, he can hear any issues with the metal.
While they're looking for the ringtone,
Yeah, you can hear it yourself when I hear it. They possess quite the ringtone.
The ones that pass inspection go into the oven to be reheated. This loader can feed up to 240 castings every hour.
We used to have those long rakes that you put the pies into the oven. That's really a strain on their back.
After 30 minutes, the metal is about 900 degrees Fahrenheit and soft enough to be rolled. Once they've cooled, the castings go back into the oven for 30 to 40 minutes. This process of heating and rolling is repeated multiple times until the castings are as thin as a credit card. And it hasn't changed much since at least the 19th century. Next, the cymbals head to the cupping machine, which will shape the bell. The bigger the bell, the more the instrument will project and the longer it will ring. Joe Pillai has worked in almost every step of production in his 29 years here.
I love working with my hands and I love music. It's kind of like my way of giving back, you know.
He uses a blanking press to cut the cymbals to the correct size.
All of the extra metal goes into our scrap printer and it all gets recycled.
Then, it's time for hammering. The first step that really begins to change the sound.
It more or less controls the shape and it regulates the sound waves going through.
The impact hammer creates dents at precise points and can apply different pressure throughout. The rotary hammer creates a circular pattern with consistent pressure. Both machines affect the pitch and tone. The cymbal gets its signature umbrella shape in the forming press. The deeper the curve, the higher the pitch. Then it's time for Joe's favourite moment: lathing.
Lathing's where the magic really happens, I think. Different type of lathing, different type of sound.
The shaper scrapes off layers of metal as the cymbal spins. It also cuts small tonal grooves in a circular pattern. Deeper and sharper grooves create more sustain, affecting how long the cymbal will ring out. Joe tapers the cymbal down, making the weight even. He has to be careful not to apply too much pressure, or he risks overworking the cymbal and making it too thin.
You're always troubleshooting. I think you're just trying to figure out how to make the cymbal perfect, you know. That's what I love about it.
Finally, he removes any imperfections with a grinder. Then, this machine smooths out the edges. But they aren't ready just yet. Each cymbal needs to be tested. Joe works closely with Guy Licata, the manager of innovation, to test 200 in half an hour.
At this stage, we're just looking really for major visual and sound defects. You know instantly if it's a good cymbal or a bad cymbal. It's when they're questionable that you really dig into it and debate it. Well, this one was overworked. You could see the rippling.
Yeah. Within acceptable ranges between here and here. So this is the standard. Those are almost identical. So this is considered conforming. This would pass.
Each cymbal is then cleaned by hand. And finally, coated with a polyurethane solution.
Mostly to protect against fingerprinting.
Zildjian has sold as many as 1 million cymbals worldwide in a year. They can cost between $90 and $4,000 each. But even with its global success, Zildjian still operates as a family-owned business.
You can go inside.
This room holds some of the earliest Zildjian cymbals made in America.
We call this the family vault. Some of these fingerprints belong to my grandfather or my father and some of the cymbal testers.
Craigie is the 14th generation Zildjian to run the company. She was the first woman to become CEO in 1999. Today, she works as president.
I never thought I would end up in the family business. It was really just for the male members. These are heavy.
A select few cymbals were gifted to some of the world's most famous drummers.
So we gave one of these to Ringo, and we had to do something so it could adapt to his hardware. But this is very old looking.
The family's story begins way back in 1618 in the Ottoman Empire, in what is now Istanbul. The company's founder, Avedis I, was an Armenian smith who worked for the Sultan, making cymbals for the military band. While trying to make gold, he discovered a bronze alloy that made the instrument stronger but thinner, with a clearer sound. He founded the company in 1623, and it thrived for centuries. The 12th generation owner, Avedis III, moved to America in the early 1900s. He was Craigie's grandfather.
If he had stayed in Turkey, that was not a good place to be for an Armenian.
The factory officially relocated to Quincy, Massachusetts, just a month before the Great Depression hit in 1929. But as the economic crisis took hold, so did a new style of American music.
It was the beginning of the jazz era, which was here.
Zildjian created cymbals for jazz legends like Gene Krupa, Chick Webb, and Joe Jones. Avedis III worked directly with them to develop new cymbals like the ride, the hi-hat, and the crash. Those gave drummers more range and freedom, and were crucial for the evolution of music.
It became the basis for cymbals as we know them today.
This collaborative tradition continued with Craigie's father in the following decades.
The ideas really just kind of flourished as my dad was there, testing cymbals in front of them. All the top drummers of the day, and we'd gain their input. Louis, Elvin, and Roy. Here's my dad. This was my dad's drum kit. I've left this as it was when he was here, when this was his office.
In the 1940s, the company provided cymbals for American and British troops during World War II. But it was the Beatles' first US performance that made Zildjian a household name. In February 1964, Ringo Starr used the company's cymbals during the band's appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show.
The Beatles, bring 'em on!
The Beatles changed everything. All of a sudden, we were back ordered because everyone wanted to start a band, a garage band.
From there, musicians from all genres were lining up to get one too.
Everything from the band and orchestra world, to marching, to jazz, to rock, to metal, to country, to everything in between.
By the mid-1980s, the company was the world's leading maker of cymbals with 40% of the market share. Today, it's made cymbals for drummers like Questlove, Travis Barker, and Anderson .Paak.
This is my dad here, yeah. My father always said we need to follow the music. So wherever the music leads us, that's how we track it, is through these musicians.
To this day, the company works closely with musicians to develop custom models tailored to their styles.
Artists are looking to express themselves. They're looking for, sometimes it's a sound, again, sometimes it's a tactile feel or response, sometimes it's an emotion.
It's why drummers like Omar Hakim only use cymbals made by Zildjian.
If I have identified a need for some instruments that I don't have in my arsenal at that moment, 11 times out of 10, they've got the solution. This is one of my favorite cymbals. It's called the K-Custom Hybrid Trash Smash.
He got his first set of Zildjians when he was just 8 and has exclusively used the company's cymbals for nearly 5 decades. Over the years, Omar has worked with artists like David Bowie, Madonna, Michael Jackson, and Miles Davis.
It's important to have a set of cymbals that resonates with the music that you're trying to create, speaks to you as a musician. When you blend the metal and the skins and the wood and you create this tonal palette to kind of cover a full spectrum of sound.
Omar says, although other cymbal companies have popped up, Zildjian still sets the standard.
Even the old ones are the bar. And that's heavy when the entire industry is using your product as the example of what needs to be in the marketplace.
The next generation of Zildjians is already working to continue the family legacy.
Gen 15, they're all board members. Each generation is charged with revitalizing the business and adding something to it.
Craigie says that as long as music lives on, so will Zildjian.
There will always be music. I mean, music is part of our soul, right?
Crafting an artisanal bagpipe takes steady hands, attention to detail, and sharp tools. The bagpipe's history spans around 3 millennia, with roots in early civilizations, and it's been a key part of Scottish heritage for well over 600 years. But there's only one workshop left in the country's capital that still makes these instruments by hand. We went to Edinburgh to see how the city's last traditional bagpipe makers are still standing. At Kilbury Bagpipes, Dave Wardle and his apprentice Rory Black take about 4 days to craft a single instrument. They make many different kinds of traditional pipes, but the most famous of all is the Scottish Great Highland Bagpipe. This style consists of 5 pipes connected to a bag. The blowpipe is the smallest. The player blows air into it to inflate the bag, which flows over the reeds inside the pipes to make music. The 3 pipes on top are called drones. The 2 tenors play just 1 note. And the larger bass is the same note, an octave lower. These give the bagpipe its distinctive continuous tone. And then the chanter has holes that the player uses for the melody, like a recorder. Dave always sharpens his tools. He does this around once every hour to keep them in good shape during the intense process.
I've actually got nerve damage in my left arm, which is probably due to the manufacturing of the bagpipes. I mean, you're working constantly with your hands, you're on your feet all day. That wood's very, very hard. You're sharpening chisels, gouges,
He uses African blackwood to make the pipes.
It has a very, very dense grain and gives a better tonal quality. It's also very, very long-lasting, very, very hard wood.
It's popular for high-quality woodwinds like clarinets. Ancient craftsmen used to use local hardwoods to make their instruments, but Dave gets his supply all the way from Mozambique. He drills a hole in a block of wood to form the air tunnel of each pipe. Before the mechanical lathe, artisans had to carve every hole and shape every pipe completely by hand. But now, most bagpipes are mass-manufactured by machines rather than by hand like at Kilbury. As the apprentice, one of Rory's tasks is to roughly shape the wood into a cylinder. As the lathe turns the block, he uses a sharp chisel to round off the edges evenly.
The main motive was the way the pipes are made. Everything's hand done, start to finish. There's no CNC machines. It's all hands-on, being taught how it was done in the most traditional ways that we installed.
Dave takes on the more intricate decoration work, called beading and combing. This is a delicate process that gives each pipe its traditional pattern. The combs are the small bands of grooves cut into the wood, and the beads are the smooth sections between them. Then Dave makes the projecting mounts. He drills these pieces out of wax and puts them on each drone between sections. They help the pipes move when tuning, and hold them in place once the pitch is perfect. Dave applies a coat of varnish to the wood sections and mounts. Then he hammers on the decorative metal ferrules. He buys these from a silversmith for added flair to set Kilbury pipes apart from standard ones. He covers fine wool string with resin to wrap around the fittings.
This resin's very sticky, so what that does, it creates a bond with the wood so it doesn't slip. This is a process called hemping the pipes.
Hemping makes the connection airtight, and it has to be done carefully so the pieces hold together, but can still move just enough to tune. Dave inserts a single reed into the bottom of each drone, and a double reed into the chanter. Like all woodwinds, the reeds vibrate and produce sound when air passes through. Now the pipes are ready to go into the bag. Dave seals them into a Gore-Tex bag with a zipper and rubber gaskets. Traditionally, the airbag was made from animal hides, and Dave still receives some custom orders with this request. But many players say synthetic bags like this have better moisture control and are easier to maintain. Finally, he gives the finished pipe its last decorations, the cover and cords. The protective cover is often made of velvet or tartan, and the cord